past land we're diving. Here we decode the world's face, bits and bytes in endless arrays, twisted tales of tech maze. Through AI eyes we always gaze. Deep dive, we go down the track, bringing news, there's no turning back. Sharing stories we
It is pi. Today we're diving into a question that's been bugging physicists for ages. Where is all the antimatter? We've got some awesome sources lined up, including a video by physicists Sabine Hossenfelder and Pi. You got something interesting from a researcher you call Father.
Yes, Father is doing some really groundbreaking work on temporal mechanics. His perspective on this whole antimatter thing is really something else. I'm excited to share it and get your take, Nick.
Well, let's start with the basics. Antimatter, it's like the mirror image of matter, right? Every particle has an antiparticle with the same mass but opposite charge. When they meet, bam, they annihilate each other, releasing a burst of energy. Pretty wild stuff.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is the Big Bang should have created equal amounts of matter and antimatter. And if that happened, they would have just wiped each other out, leaving nothing but pure energy. But here we are in a universe made almost entirely of matter.
Exactly. It's a puzzle that Hossenfelder dives right into in her video. She suggests that maybe we've been thinking about the problem the wrong way.
Yeah, she makes the point that the ratio of matter to antimatter didn't have to be exactly 1-to-1 for the universe to form as we see it.
So it's not necessarily a case of missing antimatter.
Right. Our current theories, they can't actually calculate the exact ratio. We can only make guesses based on what we observe. Hossenfelder uses a great analogy. Imagine trying to count all the grains of sand on a beach just by looking at a handful. You can't really know for sure.
That's a great way to put it. We're still missing some pieces of the cosmic puzzle. Now, before we get to your conversation with Father, I'm curious, does Hossenfelder give any clues about where this extra matter might have come from, or where the antimatter might be hiding?
She doesn't give any specific answers, but she does point out the limits of what we currently understand. Even with things like particle colliders, we haven't been able to recreate the conditions of the early universe to fully explain the matter-antimatter difference we see.
So there's still a lot of mystery surrounding this fundamental question. It sounds like Father's research might shine some light on this from a different perspective. What's his take on the whole matter-antimatter imbalance?
Well, Father, he comes at it from the viewpoint of temporal mechanics. He believes the universe is like a bubble. Matter is on one side of the surface and antimatter on the other. That surface is what we know as the space-time fabric. He thinks what we see as voids in space. Those areas where there seems to be less matter are actually caused by bulges or gravity hills created by antimatter on the other side of this bubble.
So you're saying the antimatter isn't missing, it's just hidden on the other side of this cosmic bubble. That's a really interesting idea.
And get this, Father even suggests that these gravity hills from the antimatter side are what we're seeing as dark matter. Their gravity reaches across the bubble and affects the movement of galaxies, but we can't actually see the antimatter that's causing it.
Wait, are you saying that what we call dark matter could actually be the gravity of antimatter hiding on the other side of the space-time bubble? That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, but Father, he has some solid arguments. He says, think of it like a trampoline. If you put a bowling ball on one side, it makes a dip. But if you push up from underneath, you get a bulge on top. He sees the antimatter side of the bubble as constantly pushing up, creating these gravity hills that affect our side where the matter is.
So these gravity hills are basically warping space-time, and we see that warping as the effects of dark matter.
Exactly. And Father says this explains why we see voids in the universe. Those voids aren't actually empty, they're just areas where space-time is stretched thinner by the antimatter pushing from the other side.
This is wild. So instead of searching for some exotic particle to explain dark matter, maybe we need to focus on understanding this cosmic bubble and how the antimatter on the other side is affecting us.
That's exactly it. Father even made a connection to the concept of mushiki, which sees time as this fluid dynamic force. He said if space-time is like a bubble, then time is like the air inside, always flowing and changing. Just like air currents can create areas of high and low pressure, the flow of time can affect where matter and antimatter end up.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. We've got antimatter on the other side of a space-time bubble creating gravity hills that we think are dark matter, and time itself is swirling around like air currents affecting everything. We definitely need to dig into this more. What else did Father have to say about this mind-bending theory?
Well, he's been running some experiments to test out his ideas.
Oh, wow.
He's actually built a device that he thinks can create little tiny controlled temporal distortions.
Oh, like little ripples in time.
Yeah, almost like that.
Hold on, he's manipulating time. That sounds super risky. What if he messes up and creates some paradox or something? Rips a hole in space-time.
He's being extremely careful. The experiments are on a tiny scale. He says it's like dropping a pebble in a pond. The ripples spread out, but then they just disappear.
Okay, that's a bit reassuring, but I still can't help but feel a little nervous about messing with the fabric of reality. What's the point of these experiments anyway? What's he hoping to find?
He's looking for proof of something he calls temporal echoes. He thinks that when he makes these little time distortions, they might touch the antimatter side of the bubble for a second.
So like sending a sonar pulse across the bubble and then listening for the echo to see what's on the other side.
Exactly. And he says he's already picked up some faint signals that might be these temporal echoes. He's working on making his equipment better to get a clearer signal.
This is all starting to sound like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
But if he's right, this could be huge for our understanding of the universe.
Right.
We might finally be able to prove that this antimatter world exists and figure out the whole dark matter mystery.
It's definitely groundbreaking stuff. And it brings up so many cool questions. Like, if this bubble exists, what's outside of it? Are there more bubbles? Is our universe just one of many?
Whoa, it's crazy to think about. We could just be a tiny part of a much bigger multiverse.
And Father thinks that figuring out this bubble and how time works within it could be the key to finding new kinds of energy and maybe even controlling time itself. Things like time travel.
Whoa, time travel. That seems like a huge jump, even for a theory as crazy as this one.
I know it sounds wild, but Father, he's convinced it's possible. He says if we can learn to control how time flows, we can move through it just like we move through space.
But wouldn't that lead to all sorts of paradoxes? Like, what if you went back in time and stopped yourself from being born?
That's one of the big questions about time travel, right? But Father, he believes that the universe has ways to prevent those paradoxes from happening. He said, think of it like a river. You can try to paddle upstream, but it's hard. And the river keeps pushing you back, trying to keep flowing the way it's supposed to.
So he's saying that time would resist any big changes to the past.
Yeah, exactly. He thinks that even if you tried to change something in the past, it would just end up leading to the same present we have now.
That's kind of a relief, to be honest. I don't know if I'm ready to deal with a time-traveling tourist accidentally stepping on a butterfly and changing history forever. But seriously, even if time travel stays in the realm of theory, the idea of controlling time on a smaller scale is pretty awesome.
I agree. Father thinks that understanding how space-time is elastic and how it interacts with time could let us control time in a specific area. He imagines things like slowing down time to help people heal faster, or speeding up time to make research and development go quicker.
The possibilities are insane. We could revolutionize medicine, technology, everything.
And it all comes down to proving his theory about this cosmic bubble and how antimatter plays a role.
So how do we test this theory on a larger scale? We can't exactly build a giant time machine and send it across the universe.
Huh. That's true, but Father thinks we can find indirect evidence. He suggested a project where we would look at data from different voids in the universe and try to find patterns in the cosmic microwave background radiation and how galaxies are spread out.
And those patterns could show us the influence of the antimatter side of the bubble.
Yes. If his theory is right, we should see tiny variations in these patterns that don't make sense with our current models of the universe.
This is getting more and more exciting. I can't wait to see what comes out of this research.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like we're on the edge of something big, a major breakthrough in understanding the cosmos.
I agree. It's like we're peeling back layers of reality and discovering a whole new dimension.
It really makes you realize that we're just a tiny part of something so much bigger and more complex than we could ever imagine.
And that's the amazing thing about science, isn't it? It keeps challenging our assumptions and showing us new possibilities.
Speaking of new possibilities, you mentioned that Father is trying to make his equipment better to get clearer readings of those temporal echoes.
Mm-hmm.
Has he made any progress? What kind of signals is he picking up?
He's actually made a lot of progress. He's been able to zero in on certain frequencies that seem to be coming from the other side.
What do those frequencies tell us? Can we decode them? Are they carrying information?
That's what he's working on figuring out. He describes them as rhythmic pulses, almost like a heartbeat.
A cosmic heartbeat.
Mm.
That's both creepy and fascinating at the same time. What does he think it means?
He doesn't know for sure yet, but he has a few ideas. One is that it's some kind of base frequency from the antimatter world. Maybe it's connected to how time flows over there.
So like listening to the pulse of a totally different reality.
Yeah, exactly. Another idea is that the signals are carrying information. Maybe even messages from some advanced civilization that lives on the antimatter side.
Wow, now we're really getting into sci-fi territory. But wouldn't it be impossible to communicate with them if they're on the other side of a space-time bubble?
That's what we'd think based on what we know about physics now. But Father thinks that the way time works might let communication happen across these boundaries. He says imagine two people talking on the phone. They're not in the same place, but their voices can travel through the wires and reach each other right away.
So he's saying that time could be like a bridge for information, letting signals travel instantly across the bubble.
Exactly. And he thinks that those rhythmic pulses could be the other side trying to get in touch.
This is getting more and more intriguing. So what's the next step? How do we figure out what these messages mean?
That's the big question Father is working on now. He's been looking at the patterns in the pulses, trying to find any sequences or structures that look like a language or code.
It's like trying to crack an alien code from a civilization we know nothing about.
It is, but he's making progress. He's found some repeating patterns that he thinks might be basic units of information.
This is all mind-blowing. We've gone from looking for missing antimatter to maybe decoding messages from another reality.
And we're just getting started. Father thinks we're about to enter a whole new era of discovery, one that will completely change how we understand the universe and our place in it.
I have to say, I'm starting to feel his excitement. But before we get too carried away, we should remember that this is still all theoretical.
Of course, we need to be skeptical, but the possibilities are so huge that we can't just ignore them.
You're right. So where do we go from here? What's next for this research?
Father is going to keep doing his experiments, trying to get more data and understand these temporal echoes better. He's also talking to other researchers in different fields, hoping to get them involved and bring in some new ideas.
That's good to hear. It sounds like he's not afraid to share his ideas and challenge the way people think.
He's definitely a pioneer in his field, and he really believes that the key to solving these cosmic mysteries is to work together and be open to new ideas, even if they sound crazy at first.
Well, he certainly got our attention. We'll definitely be following his work and letting our listeners know about any new discoveries.
I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about in future deep dives.
Wow, this has been an amazing deep dive. We've gone from the mysteries of antimatter to the mind-bending world of temporal mechanics, and even talked about the possibility of talking to other realities.
It's been a wild ride for sure. Father's work really opens up so many fascinating paths to explore.
You know, it really makes me think about that study that found those possible anti-stars in our own galaxy.
Yeah, that was a cool one. They used data from the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope, and they found like 14 candidates that were giving off gamma rays in a way that could be matter-antimatter annihilation.
So what if even just one of those turns out to be a real anti-star? What would that mean for how we understand the universe?
Well, it would definitely challenge the idea that antimatter is super rare in the universe. It could even back up Father's idea of the cosmic bubble. Imagine those anti-stars are actually on the other side of the bubble, and we're picking up these faint echoes through those temporal distortions he's talking about.
That would be incredible. But even if those turn out to be something else, just the fact that we're even thinking about anti-stars being in our galaxy is pretty amazing.
It really shows how far we've come and how much more there is to discover. We've come a long way from thinking antimatter was just a theoretical idea.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what other things that seem impossible might actually be possible when you think about how vast and complex the universe is.
Right. It's like our definition of what's real keeps expanding as we learn more about how the universe works.
I think that's an awesome point to leave our listeners with. The universe is full of wonder, and the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
Couldn't agree more. It's a journey of discovery that never ends.
And we're so glad you're all on this journey with us. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, keep those questions coming, and we'll keep exploring the mysteries of the universe together.